I am joined as ever by Anne Lord Jackson. Hello, Anne.
Hello, good morning, afternoon, and evening.
Yes, I do this every week on my show because then I say good night and think, no, it's not goodbye, because it's somehow good night feels like it's a farewell, whereas good morning is more of a hello, isn't it?
It is a hello, it's a lovely thing.
It's a funny, but yes, my show starts with good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but not good night,
Oh,
because
there
it
you are.
feels like I'm saying goodbye to them.
Oh,
That's not
well.
right. Bizarre English language. Now, how has your week been recently? Because we are now starting to struggle with pollen, which is making me, at some point, if it gets bad, I'm going to struggle. My oldest son is really going to struggle. Pollen, sensory health. I mean, we take antihistamine to try and, because a pharmacist said just keep taking it from this month to this month every day. It builds up a reserve and it helps you through. How can we expect people with sensory health issues that they might struggle with pollen?
Oh, that's really the whole thing is just really hard. Struggling with pollen is a really good example for those who don't have sensory issues to have some sense of awareness of what it's like for people who do. And for them, it's 24/7, 365 days a year. It's not just in the season of like the hay fever season. So there is a definite sensitivity and understanding and compassion that comes out around this time for those who do have sensory issues who will they won't have that same allergic response, but their bodies certainly respond in a way, in an allergic way, to sensations that are too bright, too loud, too soft, too smelly, and all the rest of it. For those who are actually suffering with hay fever itself, it's just a horrible one that we would only use the senses to try and comfort and calm and just support because it's rotten and looking after, if your eyes are streaming, it's looking after your eyes, looking after your nose, just looking and pampering yourself as much as possible to cope with the experience, really.
Interesting that it gives us, I suppose, for those of us who would say we have a good sensory health, actually, you're saying hay fever is a really good way of saying that this is actually something of an example of how people struggle. Because I know for me, I don't always struggle with hay fever.
Mm.
Some crops will make it more affect me than others. I've learned not that long ago. I didn't know that it's actually a severe allergic reaction, and we just think, oh, it's a bit of hay fever, but actually, it's a severe allergic reaction in your body to basically a chemical that is like anything that's trying to upset or kill you, it's having a very, very bad effect. Hence the snotty nose and the itchy eyes. It's actually effectively, it's a proper full on allergic reaction, although generally isn't going to kill you.
Mm. And it is what happens neurophysiologically for us when there are things that come into our systems that we don't know how to deal with. Our body responds in lots of different ways. Obvious allergic reaction to pollen, sensory issues. People can overreact. They can withdraw. Same way, I suppose, others will withdraw into their house because they just don't want to be out in that environment. Um, the parallels between hay fever and sensory processing issues, it's really similar.
I'm fascinated that I picked up on something that seems to be quite helpful again. But hey, Vic, I mean, how do you help people who are struggling with sensory health if they've got pollen on top? I mean, we're talking about how having hay fever can help us understand what it's like for somebody who's got a struggle with sensory health throughout the year, and we have it when we have sensory hay fever, 3, 6 months, whatever. But you're saying it's quite similar. But how do you help somebody who's already got sensory health, and then on top of that has this basically allergic reaction to the pollen, and then it's going to make, I mean, everything just gets worse, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Everything is heightened. Their physiology is more sensitive to sensory sensitivities. So we just pile on, pile on all the good stuff that we know to do. So there's plenty more cuddling where we can, plenty more deep pressure, plenty more swinging and moving through space and using keeping the pollen away as much as possible, using all of those adaptations, all those environmental changes to expose yourself to the least possible to the environment, but it really is piling on all of the good stuff for the smells that you do like and the sights and the sounds and using all of our sensory processing strategies to calm the system down when it is physically going to be responding to the pollen and that the nose is going and the eyes are going, and you from that perspective we can't help that bit from a sensory perspective, but we can certainly feed into their systems to help them feel better while letting it run its course.
Well, I guess the other thing is it helps us to understand how can we manage stuff, because if you can't prevent pollen, and you can't unless
Mm.
you live in a bubble, you are not going to stop pollen being an issue. If you struggle, if you're struggling because you can't hold a piece of paper because of sensory health, we've talked about that, you're surrounded by paper one way or another. You're going to have to find a way of managing holding a piece of paper. Maybe you can stick a glove on. I mean, there are things, but I know in the past I've met people who found pollen filters on cars if they're maintained. It gives them some relief, some release. They go and sit in the car, they switch the engine on, they switch the air conditioning on with the pollen filter, and all of a sudden, within a minute or two, they're starting to breathe. Everything starts to calm down. But I'm guessing, in a sense, that's a similar track, isn't it, to some of the things you said? That's something we can understand
Yeah.
sitting in the car with a pollen filter on to deep pressure, which makes no sense unless you need it. Well, why would you sit in a car with a pollen filter on? Just get on with your day. But if you can't, you can't.
Yeah, that's right. And it's having those little sensory diet breaks as we talk about the things within your day that will help you cope with the day, because you can't take the pollen away, you can't take sensory experiences away. So what do we need to fill the day with? How many times do we need to withdraw and be in our blackout tents and put the sunglasses on or put the ear defenders on or just retreat and just have some quiet or go for a walk in nature? Or how many of those things do you need within your day? It's like how many sits in the car with your pollen filter do you need in order to get through this season?
There's always things we can do. When I was driving trucks and it got really hot days, many trucks don't have air conditioning. You might be surprised to know this. Most trucks that cost, £500,000 aircon. Nah, you don't need that. You'll cope. So we live and work in these greenhouses, and more often than not, I would find a petrol station or a diesel station somewhere that had air conditioning, and I would go and park up, not on a break, and just have a very big long browse of the of all the things in a really boring petrol station and cool down, because my senses, I guess, I'm trying to apply this into sensory health, but I'm really hot. I'm really cranky. I can only drink so much physical fluid. I need
Mhm.
to get out of the greenhouse of a cab, which is basically what it is. And then I would go and find a petrol station which was air conditioned, or a supermarket, and go and browse the milk because it's
Amen.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I was actually chatting with one of the teachers today who we were talking about some of the weighted objects, because you have to be careful with weighted blankets. We have had some people actually die because of the way that they've been misused.
Wow.
So we were talking about how to bring some weighted objects into school safely. And it was just one of those off the cuff remarks of, oh yeah, I could do with one of those. And I thought, yes, of course you do. Every single teacher, every single one of us needs to have a really good look at who we are, how we are, and think of those little things actually just to have something like a bit of weight on you just for a little time, maybe when you're having your coffee or otherwise. It's like, I think we were chatting about the last time, or what, one of our weeks, about having oh, that's right, it was sitting and enjoying your magazine, our Pure Media magazine. And I would want to cuddle up and I'd have my knees up so I'd get that proprioceptive experience, and I'd have my tactile blanket and I have my tactile hot cuppa of something. And then I would sit and have the physical experience of actually moving the pages over one. That's a really lovely moment of sensory experiences, enjoying that. But actually having something weighted on top of that for some people is just takes them a bit closer to heaven. You know, that they've got it, they put it around their shoulders. It might be something that you stick in the microwave that's heated. So you have a heated, weighted pad on your knees, on your shoulders, on your arms, or yeah, so I don't know how we got there, but yeah, no, weighted stuff. If anybody is listening and wants to get weighted stuff, please just make sure that if you do go and buy something off your own bat, that the individual or you can actually take it off, because that is where we've had the deaths.
Mm.
That people haven't had the capacity to remove themselves from something that has been on them, that has been weighted.
Which is the importance I keep on coming back to, speaking to somebody like you who actually knows what's good and what's, let's just say, less safe or less preferable. Put it that way. There are things that are going to be very beneficial and some things that might help, and other things that, yeah, that's not really, really right, because people have a bit of knowledge and a bit of power. I don't think of myself as a sensory health specialist. I chat to you for, a year and a bit, and I've got some knowledge, but I would never go around saying, yeah, I'll do therapy, because I've got a tiny piece of knowledge, which is I would always defer back to you.
Thank you.
It's safer.
Oh, it is safer, and especially because it's just every now and again I say, "Oh yeah, we had somebody die for that," and then people are like, "Seriously?" And it's just like, "Well, yeah." And the vestibular system, it's just like, well, if you want your child to come out and vomit, well, then go ahead, but perhaps maybe listen to how to be sensitive to the movement experiences that you give them. People kind of almost assume that, oh yeah, we're going down to the play area, play park or the roller coasters or whatever. And for some reason, it's kind of assumed to be part of the experience that people get sick. And it's like, before you get there, maybe just test out what their vestibular system can cope with, because it's a really horrible day. If you've spent all day going to Alton Towers or Legoland or Disney World or wherever, and then you end up with one or two of your family just absolutely being wiped out because of the intensity of the experience.
I mean, just on that one, if you're vomiting, it's a body response to a problem, either because it's ejecting something that shouldn't be there, or it's a very bad response to pain, or you've got dizzy. Being sick, whilst it can help you if you've eaten something bad, it's not basically a good thing.
No, not something we should look to. Now, having said that, not about the sickness, but if people don't get dizzy, that is part and parcel of some of the therapy that I do, to try and get that registration, try and get the connection between the vestibular system and the brain. So I celebrate when we get dizziness. I'm not celebrating if we get to the stage of sickness. But dizziness is good. So if your child or your individual doesn't get dizzy, then again, it might be worth just connecting, and we need to explore and find out a little bit more about somebody's vestibular system. Because if you don't get dizzy, then you're not really registering the input that you are supposed to. Because dizziness is a natural reaction and a good reaction. But if it's not there, something's not quite joined up the way it could be.
Interesting you make that one because I would say it's good not to be dizzy, but of course, if you can't experience dizziness at all,
Mhm.
that's something entirely different. I mean, I went on a ride. I forgot, was it? It was in Alton Towers. It was one of these things with lots of dips and stuff, and it's supposed to mimic basically a shuttle launch. That was the thing. You held up in the ground. You drop down. Well, I'm okay so far. Feeling a bit nervous, but then there are a few parts where your stomach kind of is in the air and you're moving away, and it's those sensations. I've never been able to go on since. It sort of destroyed something in me. The fun bit that started was now I almost did throw up. So I don't go on those rides because you know what? If my stomach feels like it's floating,
Mhm.
I'm not doing very well, which I think is probably quite healthy.
I think it is very healthy. Yeah. And I am very curious to see how the astronauts are doing, literally the astronauts that have come down, because what that has done to their vestibular system. Oh, I was listening to this interview actually that one of the girls who had been up previously, one of the astronauts, and she'd spent that much amount of time. It's the muscle wastage and the fact that they're not used to holding their head up. So that all the proprioceptors, all the kind of muscles all over, we know are wasted, or even though they're trying to keep up, because that's what gravity does to our body. It's a good thing that we have gravity. We're designed to function within gravity, but it is fascinating seeing what happens to astronauts and the training that they need to go through in order for them to be able to survive with being able to float, with not feeling the weight that we feel from our bodies. And that gives us our body awareness, that enables us to be coordinated and do things with skill. And it's a completely different level being able to do that where there is no gravity, there is no resistance to your body, to your skin, to your vestibular system. It's just a nothingness.
I guess there are exercises they can do. You can have, I suppose, some sort of negative band. So when you pull it, you're physically finding some resistance for your muscle to pull against. But that's only ever going to go so far. We know astronauts go up; they are supremely fit and healthy before they get there. But 8 months stuck in space. I mean, the sensory. I mean, how do you not fall over when you get to the ground because you've had no up
No,
for
that's right.
8 months?
And it's like the brain has to learn what up is now. We have done experiments with, or scientists have done experiments where they've actually put even goggles on individuals where their whole world is turned upside down. And it's seeing how long does it take for the brain to recalibrate and learn how to navigate a world that the brain thinks is upside down, but no, they're actually living on Earth and the right way up. And it literally is only a week or two. And then you've got that kind of like whole readjustment back. But when you're looking at 8 months and they do not know, their brain has had no awareness of which way is up, which way is upside down. It's going to be fascinating to hear some stories.
I saw a clip of, I think it was one of the female astronauts from a long time ago, and she came to Earth. She was stood at the rostrum saying, "Hi, we're back," and all that stuff. And then she just passed out and fainted. And that was her body's reaction to standing up, I guess, because what's this upright thing we're talking about? I've been floating. But I guess that is also another helpful example of some of the stuff that you're trying to help people with, because the astronauts have no sense of upright. Gravity is irrelevant up there. They grab something, it pulls. Yes, they can do some of that stuff, but there's no upright. There's no, there's no grounding of any sort, because now there's no down, there's no up. And I guess that is one of the issues that you're going to come across, not from astronauts necessarily, unless you're moonlighting for NASA, but it's one of the things they're going to struggle with, isn't it? If you've got poor sensory health and you don't have that connection, which is what the astronauts are going to have as soon as they get to Earth, actually, that could be a daily struggle for somebody else on Earth.
It is because they describe to me it feels as though they're floating, but they're on Earth. But we've got inside our ears where the vestibular system is based. We've got these calcium carbonate crystals, and they sit, and then the jelly is affected by gravity, and that sends information. The hair cells are stimulated, and it sends electrical impulses, and so on and so forth. So it's tiny little things to give us that sense of awareness. Amazingly created we are, just phenomenally positioned and designed for Earth, and just that level of gravity. Because even I've had that, you're talking about your stomach kind of like being in one place and the body in the rest. Even flying, it doesn't do that to me anymore. But then I've had some good flights for the last number of years. But certainly flying will do that. If in that bit of turbulence when the plane goes, and you just get that little bit that your stomach's left somewhere else. But it's and that's just moving up a little bit. So it finely designed earth and atmosphere that we live in.
We touch on this design every so often of how God's made us to be, because you will often refer to when this isn't working this way, then that's not God's design for you. So how can we get you back to where God wants you to be? And there's going to be physical defects. We can have damage through our life. We can be born with struggles. I mean, the obvious ones are missing limbs. That happens. But if you can have a missing limb at birth, then you can have missing bits inside your ears or whatever it is you've got, or just the connections in the brain, from trauma or whatever. And it completely throws our world upside down. So we almost are living upside down, because everything that we think isn't. And the astronauts is a really good example, because everything they knew now isn't. And they know it was, but their body's saying, not a chance. No, I want the floaty thing. Thanks very much. And regardless of what help and support they're given, they're still going to be thinking, I've dropped my pen. Where's it gone? And even something as simple as that, because if you drop a pen in space, it ain't no going nowhere, because you can't drop it.
I don't know. They're like the training that you'd have to go with. They're going to use everything. You have to use those cognitive strategies to get your mind in the right place, sensory strategies to try and get the body back together, spiritual strategies to think, goodness me, like I'm still alive. How did that happen? And goodness, yeah, it's a full care. Yeah. It's going to be very. Oh, I can't wait to hear the stories. I keep saying it because I do. Just can't wait to hear what they say and how their treatment goes and what support they're going to have coming through it all to hopefully some degree of normality. Anyway, I don't think any of us are. I don't know what normal is really, but or whether we should even expect there to be a normal.
There's an existential crisis conversation for a different program. What's normal? When we're talking about senses, though, normal health. One of the things that I was thinking about, which I know we've touched on a little bit. We did one thing before Christmas. We've touched on it again much earlier last year. But how do we best help people who are they would assume themselves to be in a really good sensory healthy place, but they are caring for somebody, whether it's a child or a grandfather who, has got some sensory health issues. How do we help them? I guess what I'm saying is, how do we help them with basic first aid for their own life in order that they can best help someone, not with their physical struggle, but with the sensory health struggle? I mean, are there any differences?
Between a physical health and a sensory health
In
struggle.
terms of caring for someone, yeah.
Oh, in caring for someone. Yeah, you'd go through the same kind of like diagnostic process. So if I was going out to someone with a physical, we do that assessment. Like what can they do? What can't they do? Which bits of the body are affected? What's their range of movement? Can they lift up their leg to get out of bed? Can they do, the practical things you do all of those kind of assessments. And that's exactly the same when you go through the sensory health side of it. And that's what's been so lovely as an OT being working through the mental health services, physical health services, older people services, schools, families, organizations, and just thinking we it's exactly the same process that we go through. It just depends on what it is that we choose to focus on. So it is very much then looking at let's break down those senses. And that's what the sensory super system helps people to do. We break down each of the senses, have a look at how it's processing, and I guide people as to all the different elements of what the senses could or couldn't be doing, getting their thumbprint together. And then we put in that plan as to how it's best to bring out the best in them in whatever that looks like for them, whatever age they are, whatever they're doing during their day, whatever their occupation is, whatever their quality, whatever their life is, whatever support they've got. We have to find something that is personal, tailored to them in order for it to work. So I don't deal with one size fits all approaches at all.
I never buy a one size fits all hat because it never fits. It's the size of my brain. I'm sure that's the issue. No, but this is the thing. We get these one size fits all hoodie or a hat or something. I bought a one size fits all scarf and think, who's this made for? A baby? I mean, seriously, who's made this one size fits all that's so tiny? Because the problem with that approach is, as much as it's easy to mass produce it, it's
Hmm.
not necessarily going to be helpful to any individuals. And we are all, I believe, deliberately and purposely made on purpose and with a purpose, which means we're all slightly different and we can't just fit into that normal model that we're just slightly joking about, but it is actually an issue.
I was really struck this week. I was battling against the numbers. Please don't take me in the wrong way, anybody listening to this, or when you are listening to this, it's that people are looking for their diagnosis because I think if we could just support people, love people, full stop. It doesn't matter. So I think so many people are looking for a diagnosis because then it gives them, which it does. Other people will be more compassionate. If you say, I've got autism, I've got ADHD, I've got whatever, then there is a normally there can either be some judgment with that, but most of the time, the way that society is going, it comes with a degree of compassion. And I think why do people need it shouldn't be, that's what I was thinking, it shouldn't be that people need this diagnosis in order to help people be more compassionate. We should just be more compassionate, full stop. In which case, there then isn't the need to need the diagnosis for that reason. It can be useful to find out if your brain thinks a certain way, and that's the bit I don't want to be misunderstood about. But the need, I was just really sensing that there's a lot of people who are needing a diagnosis here because it gives other people the opportunity to, or it causes other people, it passes it back to other people to say, look, you have to accept that I'm different here. Um, and and I thought, oh, it's a shame that we just can't bring our people up, bring our children up to say, actually, everybody's completely different, and and can't we just love them? And it doesn't matter whether they have a diagnosis or not. We're all going to be a bit quirky. We're all going to be a bit different. So,
That'd be a fascinating world to try to do. But the things we can make a difference towards that because it's how we treat other people. And although it sounds like some sort of wonderful ethereal, that'll be lovely. Actually, we can do something towards that. We can actually love people, like say, as they are. We go straight back into scripture. Jesus loved people as he found them, not when you get to this place, let's talk. He met them where they were at, which is effectively what you're saying. Let's meet people where they're at. I'm always struck that in France and UK, there's a different gestation period for a baby. One uses 9 months, one uses 40 weeks. So interventions in the UK are higher because they say, oh, that's it, you've got your time. Whereas in France, it's about, was it 4 or 5 days different? So they don't go suddenly for C-sections and all the rest of it because, well, we've got another 5 days yet. Even that one, I don't know how up to date that is. That one always strikes me, our perception of even something as simple as a pregnancy, it's 9 months. Well, 40 weeks isn't 9 months, actually. It's not exactly the same number of days. So the French system, there were much less intervention for mums because got another 5 days yet. Whereas in the UK, that's it. You're off we go. Let's get the labour started. And even that one, if we were just a bit more patient and perhaps had a slightly different perspective on things and the confidence, which is so important, people in the UK might say, no, I'm not having that actually yet. Thank you. Not advocating, by the way, to not ignore your doctors. Don't go there. But if we were just a bit more knowledgeable with information and less judgmental, it would be massively different.
Mm. And that's a really powerful one. I didn't know that, but I can understand that because also it's just, yes, we have scans and this, that, and the other, but it's like when exactly was conception? I don't know that there's lots around that. And when we're talking about days, it's and a day, an extra day in the womb
Mm.
is it generally, yeah, but then I'm going to be speaking out of turn for me because it's just like, yeah, you then get bigger babies and then you have an issue because of like all the delivery side of it. So yeah, I'm not going there, but I think yeah, that's yeah, good to be aware of.
Not a midwife, just saying, or medically trained in any way. But I just think it's interesting that we have, like you were saying, if we, rather than someone saying, yes, I've got autism, there's two things. One, that we've talked about this before, we've touched on it quite a few times. It can be an excuse to batter someone, I've got autism, so you must, which isn't going to win you friends and influence people. It's just going to put people on edge. If
Mm,
you have got autism, yeah, okay, let's be understanding. But I think what I love about children, especially the youngest children, toddlers, they just play with people. You're my
mm,
friend. Let's have a play. Why have you
mm.
taken that? I don't like you now. Not I hate you. You're wrong, or you're evil, or what's wrong with you. Just give me the toy back. And actually, we lose some of that childlike beauty as we get older. Childishness, yes, we can lose that. That's fine. But again, the Bible again comes to our help. We need to have a childlike faith, and we need to have a childlike approach to people where we love them as they are, rather than saying, "Well, here's my little tick box, and you've got 4 out of 5. So let me know when you get that fifth box ticked, and then you can come back and talk again." Whereas a 2-year-old doesn't have that list because they can't hold the pen yet. They just care about the person, which is what you were saying.
Which is beautiful. I remember seeing a post and it was gorgeous between these two boys that are dressed. They're tiny, tiny. It must have been 3-year-olds, something like that. And they had their matching checked shirts on. One was a white boy, one was a black boy, and they said we could be twins. And it was just that sense of there was no distinction between skin color. He said, "Oh, these, we could be twins," and it was just like, how gorgeous that is how it should be. That beautiful childlike. I see you as a person, and I really like you, and you look like
Mm.
me, and I look like you. Obvious differences, but the humanity was just beautiful.
But the difference is that people see they didn't care about, which is kind of the point of what you're making, rather than saying, I need to have a diagnosis for autism because and everybody will understand me better.
Mm,
Well, actually, probably not in a sense, because unless they have a real understanding medically of what autism is and how it affects your thinking, your interactions, and sensory health and physical health, it may actually not be as helpful as you might want it to be, perhaps even as it should be. Although I don't like the word should, that's a guilt thing, isn't it? But actually, sometimes the diagnosis isn't maybe what we need, but it, like you say, it can help us in a sense that I understand what's going on. When I was told I was having severe palpitations, it didn't help me at all. I was no further forwards. It didn't help me medically. There's nothing they can do apart from a surgery when it got really severe. But knowing that I was having severe palpitations didn't help me. Being told I didn't have the condition of atrial fibrillation. Great, thanks. Well, what is it?
mhm,
It's not always going to be the thing that we desperately think is going to provide us that peace and
mhm,
that satisfaction, that closure, which is I love that American phrase of closure. It doesn't give us that, which is why it's best to be more content with the world that we're in.
mhm, mhm. I think the more support we can give to help people be content in the world that they're in, that's what it comes down to.
Excuse me. Which is where it comes to you. Just give us a quick overview then, as we come towards the end. Just reminder how do you help people in a kind of a really simple way? What is it you're actually doing day to day, week to week, month to month that can enable people to more ably live and enjoy the world they're in?
Mm. When they know who they are, it's finding out who they are. And who doesn't want to know a little bit more about who they are and what makes them tick? So we explore the very foundation. So I help people explore the very foundations upon which everything else that is human is built upon that. And we look at where there are issues in their life that they'd like to be more confident in, or they'd like to be a bit more coordinated in. They'd like to be just a bit more content with what's going on and be less anxious and be less stressed and be less frustrated and be less exhausted. Those are the kind of main negative things that people want to get out of. So that's what we do. When we explore the senses, we assess the senses and we find out what are the areas in their life that they're not doing as well as they would like to. And that's when we can put in treatment strategies, management strategies, simple things, big things. Things can change overnight. Things sometimes take weeks, things sometimes take months. But it's just getting people to a good place where they can actually do what it is that they want to do in life, underpinned by good and much, much better sensory processing and integration.
I've got a very good live example of how we can help others. So I just coughed a minute ago, which was a bit unexpected. And then somebody, I didn't need to say, can I have a diagnosis? I've got a dry throat. Someone heard me cough and brought me a glass of water. And all of a sudden I could feel my senses calm down because I'm supposed to be leading a conversation. It's a big deal. And this water arrived. And yet I immediately relaxed. And I will say thank you to that person later. But they brought me a glass of water. That's just a glass of water while I'm coughing, which is just random one of those things. But that's what we can do for other people. We can bring them that glass of water. We can bring them a pair of gloves or a pair of tongs so they can hold a piece of paper, for example, off the back of one of our ones. But it can be really simple to help someone.
And water, I think there's a beautiful thing, obviously, in scripture when Jesus is saying, if you gave a glass of water, there is something also really powerful about water. We are 70% water, and what it does do, it absolutely calms the senses. It's an amazing thing. This water is a phenomenal thing that we've been given. So just to hear you say that, it's just like, yeah, something as simple as that reduces arousal levels, helps the brain just connect and process better. And therefore, when you're processing better, you're able to function better.
Bring somebody a glass of water. Who knows how much of an impact you can make in their life? And thank you. I never knew we were going to go into space with this conversation, but hey, that's why I love these. It's not random at all, but I love where we can end up.
Yeah.
Gravity is good for you, and so is being dizzy. But if you're getting dizzy all the time, that's not so good. And there is a balance, and that's where you need someone like Anne. And thank you. What have you got coming up in the next week where you're thinking, oh, I'm looking forward to that?
Schools, more schools are connecting, which is really lovely, to find out how it will help support them, all their school staff, whether they're parents helping in the schools or their teachers, to help get them trained up in sensory integration and processing. So yeah, really looking forward to that tomorrow.
Fabulous. If you want to connect with Anne in any way, all you need to do is to go to our website, pure247radio.org, pure247radio.org/ALJ for Anne Laure Jackson. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great to see you.
Pure Media, the magazine, is hand perfected with some of the finest writers from around the world that we could find. And yes, Andy B too. New editions are released just for you on the first Friday of every month, from our family to your family. Pure Media, the magazine, is available now. Sign up for free at puremediafamily.com/magazine.